Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Arrowhead Junction episode 16, and today's episode is one that I've personally been really excited for a pretty long time now. This is going to be finally the construction of the primary oil refinery for the entirety of Arrowhead Valley. Probably the biggest one that we'll see, and it'll be a part of a larger industrial park as well, but it's supposed to be just between the rail yard we're currently working on and the main town. So there's kind of a little area around the river where I want to plop it in particular, but what you're seeing right now is I'm just going to go ahead and lay out every single asset that I want to use for this whole project. That way we get a good idea of what buildings there are, so I can, search through all of them now and not have to keep going back and forth and trying to find whatever assets I want to use in all these different categories. So it's kind of helpful to have them all laid out there, even if I'm not going to actually pull from that little selection there, and I do sometimes. It is nice just to know or be able to visualize all the different buildings that we have already. So anyway, to start this thing off, what I want to talk about first is something really exciting actually that I found out just as I was building this, and that's that some really awesome guys over at the Simtropolis forums have been working on a entire set for an oil refinery, and they're actually in progress working on it right now as I'm starting this build. So they've already released a couple really awesome assets, which is amazing, by the way, because unfortunately it just seems like in the Steam Workshop there really aren't a whole lot of these heavy industry buildings. I mean, I've seen a few of them around, but it's a really narrow selection, and even just I think the 2 or 3 assets that they've already released now, those alone make up pretty much this entire oil refinery, because that's what we could use now. So in the future we may go back and add a few more components to this oil refinery as we go, but for now I'm just gonna work with what we have and see what we can do with this stuff. But regardless, you can see I'm using some of these pipes. This was the very first asset that was released in this whole set that Strict Toaster used in his rail yard as well. But on top of that, I believe that the two things that also got released, one was a big distillation tower, which I don't think I've plopped down yet, and the other is what's called a delayed coker, I think is the right term. I hope I pronounced that right. It turns out, if you don't know, that oil refinery is much more complex than even I imagined, and I kind of already knew it was a complex process, but there's really a lot to it. There's a lot of things that go into it, and even more things that come out of it, more than I expected. I kind of just figured that, if it take crude oil in, probably some fresh water as well, and then you get refined petroleum or whatever type of oil out of it. Well, that's not necessarily the case. It seems like there's quite a few things that they make use of during this process. Obviously, there's lots of distillation going on and all these different things that they're doing to the oil, and whenever they're doing that, there's opportunities to harvest different things. Here's that distillation tower, by the way. There's opportunities to harvest different things, and one of those things being asphalt and jet fuel and all these things. So it's really crazy, actually. I mean, obviously I'm no expert on this whole thing. I just wanted to get a little bit of knowledge on generally what these oil refineries are like, and then kind of go from there. So I feel all in all, honestly, with the knowledge that I had and a little bit of the few assets that we have at the moment, we made a pretty cool refinery out of this. So you're going to see a lot of this playing around with different things. It was honestly really hard to try and get all these things to fit together properly, because just with the limited number of assets and everything, I didn't want to have too much repetition going on. I also didn't want it to be just a tiny little refinery, so I tried to work with what we had here to make it work well. But the other thing that I sort of learned along the way here in this process is that apparently, and I didn't really know this, quite a few oil refineries will actually be combined as a I want to say a power plant that's an oil power plant, but it's not really always an oil power plant as much as it is just a power plant using some sort of excess of whatever in the process that could produce power. So I think in most cases that's steam, heat that could be transferred to energy. So a lot of times you'll have a steam plant built into an oil refinery. Now again, I could be wrong on some of these things, so keep that in mind. But that was my understanding of this anyway. And so it made a lot of sense to then use these little I think they're just steam power assets. I don't know. They're supposed to just be power plants that are steam based, but they're those little kind of longer, skinnier things on the left there right now. And I also put them down a bit lower on, but they seem to be pretty similar in style and aesthetic to the other parts that we already have, the components. So I've kind of just figured that that would be a good use of that. So this also is a power plant to an extent, so it does produce power, and I'm gonna eventually be pulling some power lines out of it and everything, and sending it off to the rest of the main town and everything. But you can see here lots of building clipping going on, of course, as always. But the biggest thing that I was having trouble with here, and you're probably seeing a little bit of it now, but I think that the bigger problem arises a bit later on as we start to connect this thing to the outside world, is that we can use move it all we want to, you know, plop things on a road and then move it off the road and put it where we want it to be. And in this case, it was like I wanted a whole bunch of things kind of condensed in the middle here. I wanted to have a lot of different types of assets and make it seem like a really dense oil refinery. But the problem with that is, even if you don't have any road connection issues, which, by the way, I've kind of figured only happens, so you can move things entirely off a road and even be like outside of range of that road, and it won't give you any trouble with missing road connections up until you update that road. So if you like change the road type, or you delete the road, or plop something else on the road, or even plop something in the footprint of the current building, then it'll start saying, oh, you need a road connection or whatever. But I thought I was just like in the clear then if I just didn't update these roads and I kept plopping things and then dragging them way off the road. Well, it turns out, and again, right now I'm just dealing with the road connection problems, not even the other problem. But what can happen is it'll tell you that it's got a road connection, but then for some reason these like fire services and police services and garbage collection can't reach these buildings, and it'll give you those problems as well. So what I eventually had to end up doing is doing some little road networks inside those buildings, those big green buildings that would be close enough to access these different other assets that are sort of plopped around behind the building, and some creative work, I guess, with that to try and get those all to fit in. But honestly, in the end, I think it was a pretty cool result of just having all these different clip buildings, especially here right now. I used the big warehouses that were in the I think Industrial Rico, and they seem to fit like exactly underneath these pipes. So you can plop the pipes on top, and then it kind of gives those pipes a bit of a different look, which is nice because, you know, I have so many of those pipes that look exactly the same all over this build. So I thought, let's get some variety in there and get something different. So that's what that's all about. Just this little kind of corner piece here with like a factory kind of clipped in over on the side here. And then I think this is about where I wanted to connect it to the main road. So that's where this whole thing came in. Now, I was having some trouble trying to figure out how we were going to connect this road to that like smaller single unit wide 2-lane road, and it always looked unnatural because like the road is so much wider. So what I ended up doing is I actually built 2 one-way streets. Well, they'll be one way. There we go. That are like side by side that kind of act almost like an avenue, and then I could use the move it tool, and you can see it actually evened out pretty well. Like, it looks pretty clean in the end, I think. And then I don't know, to me this was kind of nice as like a way to separate the entering and exiting traffic, because there's lots of, you know, oil trucks and things going on around here, so it's kind of nice to have that separation. And I'll go back in detail later, but I just wanted to get that basic entry point done. And I think that this is about where I started to realize we had some crime issues and fire issues, because all these assets weren't connected. And you can see there's quite a few assets all crammed in here. I mean, there's a lot of clipping going on. This is not like 1 or 2 big assets. There's a lot of small ones, and a lot of the times they're much too far away from the road to be getting any services. So here's that little power section I was talking about. I wanted to get what feels kind of like a power plant to me over there on that side, which is kind of nice, mostly in the back here. And at this point, I pretty much built everything that exists in the workshop, including, you know, the power, which isn't necessarily supposed to be built with an oil refinery. It was like a totally separate asset. And of course, there could be some more assets coming out. So I think I'll probably come and revisit this thing the next time I have the save and try and add in some more of these assets as they come out. But the last thing that I could kind of do that I didn't necessarily need dedicated assets to do is plop down these little like oil tanks in the back. So these would be, I guess, like the finished product would be drained into these like big oil tanks. Now, I think I started with these, and I wasn't actually a huge fan of them, just because I already have some of them over on the other side of this whole refinery. So I think I'm going to go back and use these like floating smaller tank assets, which I think work much better. Here we go. And with these, I think they look kind of nice how they like sink in and sit underneath the pipes there. I don't know. I think that's a cool little addition there. And then of course we'll come back and we'll clip some more buildings in to make it all look like one big component, I guess, which is kind of the goal of this whole thing. I just want it all to feel like one giant refinery and not a whole bunch of individual buildings. So as we continue on, and this is without any props either, mind you. I mean, we're going to go back and add the prop detailing and stuff to really make that work, but I just wanted to make the whole thing feel like one big factory, even though we are using quite a few smaller assets. So just a little rundown of all the things we have now in this refinery, and again, it's lacking in a few ways, mostly just that it's missing a few components that I think will be added later. But we've got, like I said, these things here, these like finished oil drums, or they're not really drums, like big tanks with all like the finished, I guess, refined oil. We've got those delayed cokers, which I think are the things that output the, I say output like a computer or something, but those are the things that I think produce asphalt, and that's why they have those like giant, like black looking little cement plate there or whatever, where the trucks would come in and load up on the asphalt. So we've got the delayed cokers, we've got the distillation towers, we've got what I would kind of guess to be like the main refinery building, where a lot of like the primary processes take place, would be just like those giant green and white buildings with the stuff kind of all the pipes and things behind them. Those, I think, I would imagine contain a couple different processes in them as well. And yeah, that's pretty much. Oh, and also the power production in the back. So that's about what this refinery is all about. There's not really any other components as of now. I'm gonna add in a minute here a little water pump, I guess, that comes from the river on the side here, just 'cause I felt like we should take advantage of that. And I would imagine you'd need fresh water for an oil refinery, so that's going to come into play as well. But from here on out, it's mostly just placing props. The layout's pretty much done, and I wanted to go in and start adding some details. And this did take quite a while. Again, the whole idea, right, is to make all these things feel like one big object. So I wanted to kind of connect them using different components and using the decals to make it all feel like they weren't just sitting on one giant, very, very boring, repetitive concrete texture, but instead there was, some variety, and there's dirt and grime everywhere from all these processes going on. So that's what's going to happen here. And then we'll get back to that water piece in a second. But then afterwards, I think we'll come back, probably, like I said, the next time I have to save, and maybe expand a bit more on this. But more importantly, I want to work on the rest of the industrial park, which I won't get to this episode because this took quite a while, a little bit longer than I was expecting, to be honest. But I think it was worth it in the end. I think that this kind of style of building is a lot of fun to do. I haven't really been doing it much until I got this the sharp angle junctions mod that lets you clip buildings together and all that stuff. So from here, I felt like it kind of made sense to use a few of these different chain link fences to just like block off certain areas and kind of fence in certain things, which I think just kind of makes all these different buildings look like different sort of individual units in their own way. So I tried to do that. Also, lots of decals still going down. That's not really done yet, and that probably won't be done for a while. I'm going to keep going back and adding more decals. But something that I noticed just looking at these kinds of refineries is that they're a lot less clean than I imagined. Like, I mean, I knew they wouldn't be clean, right? But the ground is like covered in dirt and like rubble. Like, it's not like a pristine location usually. In fact, a lot of these refineries don't even have concrete underneath them. They're just like, it's all dirt, and then everything's like kind of up on stilts. But yeah, that kind of surprised me, honestly. So I tried to go for that look a little bit here. This particular location, especially this side of I think that's like half of a delayed coker there. I just figured we'd have a little more like stored supplies and maybe some rubble as well. So that area's a bit more rough than the others. And then this side over here, which is next to the full-size delayed coker, is, well, it's got a lot of empty space, and I figured, well, you'd probably have quite a few of these like empty trucks sitting around that would be coming in and hauling out this asphalt. So that's what this whole area is going to be, like a little parking lot. I'm going to use some, I was playing around with that truck, but I think I'm going to use the, these big trucks that I would imagine would haul away. I think they're made as like construction trucks to haul away rubble, but they look to me a lot like the kind of trucks you use to haul away something like asphalt. So that's what that'll be for there. Just gonna plop a few of these down here and there. I also tried to use a lot of these other like construction site props, like of course the bobcats and the front loaders and all that stuff that you probably need to manage all of this asphalt that's being dumped out from that big delayed coker there. I hope that's asphalt, because I've been calling it asphalt this whole episode and it totally couldn't be, but I'm pretty sure that's what those things do. Again, kind of hard to understand a lot of the process going on in this. I was looking at some of these like little flow charts and things, and it's kind of difficult because it's easy to find flow charts, but it's hard to find like real pictures of like real refineries that, you know, so you can actually recognize what it looks like and then they describe what it is. Because I'll see a lot of pictures of just like a giant refinery and it's all kind of combined together and it's kind of hard to see like what's what. So that was like the harder part, I think, of doing some research on this one, but you know, it is what it is, I guess. Still doing some of these just like decals. There's quite a few decals on this build. I really wanted to use those oil stains, but I really couldn't find a good spot for the trucks to park, so that never really happened, I don't think. Had a few of these like offset. The other tricky thing about those big pipes, and you might have seen me just move that one a minute ago there, is that like half of the underside of those stilts will be like clear and you could drive a car underneath them, and the other half will have like a cross on it that'll prevent, you know, you couldn't have vehicles drive underneath it. And so I had to like try to stagger them in a way so that whenever they cross the roads they wouldn't be blocking the roads, and that was definitely not easy. Here's some lighting that I'm doing. Some of these components just didn't seem like they had a lot of lighting, so I went in and kind of placed some lights here and there, just to make sure the whole refinery was lit up. But I gotta say, I mean, I've already like praised these asset creators plenty, but really these assets are incredible, and not only are they really, really good, but even at nighttime the lighting is really, really good as well, which I love. That was kind of a nice surprise. Like once the nighttime, you know, shifts over and you've got like all these little tiny lights all over the giant refinery, it really does look like a real refinery. So huge props to these guys at Centropolis, and I'll actually link them in the description if you want to see, or I was going to say I'd link the collection, but there's really not actually a collection available right now, at least at the time of recording this, that kind of contains everything. But what you can do is you can go to the link in the description that should have our Arrowhead Junction collection, and I believe Strict Toaster will be just adding all of them that I've been using here at the end of the collection. So if you just go to that collection, look at the end, the last I think like probably like 10 or 20 assets should all be the assets for this refinery. But they're amazing. They're really, really good, and they're not even being made by the same person. I think there's a couple different people that are working on these, but highly recommend them. Super awesome. So I did want to add a few of these little like yellow lines here and there. I haven't really done a whole lot of work with these like road paint assets. I haven't really used them a whole lot. I know that Strict Toaster and Fresh Popcorn have done a few interchanges where they've used these, but I haven't really done it a whole lot yet. So this is kind of like my first go at it, but I mean, they're really easy to use with the prop line tool, which is nice. In this area over in particular, I wanted to have like a bit of a loading bay area for all of our oil trucks that could come in here and just like directly connect their truck to these pipes that would probably pipe out the refined oil. So I thought that was kind of a nice little thing for this location back here if it didn't really have anything else going on. Again, you kind of gotta get creative with the props and things because there's really not a whole lot of assets to work with, and I wanted to make this refinery feel complete as possible without having all the assets, obviously, to make the refinery. So this little thing was kind of nice. Those valves sort of worked out there in the end, which is kind of nice. So that loading zone really does feel like an actual proper loading zone with like a real valve that you could turn to, I guess, release the refined oil into the truck or whatever. That's kind of nice. Just like tweaking these pipes were kind of a pain towards the end. It seems like they were always blocking that little route in there. And then, of course, some cones, like usual. I tried to go a bit light on the cones. I know I use these cones quite a bit, and I don't think you need a whole lot of them in a refinery anyway, so just plopped here and there. I like these little areas, though, that you can kind of drive into that are like in the interior part of the refinery that sort of meander around between the pipes and the components and all that stuff. So I tried to add those things here and there. Over here, I just wasn't like a huge fan of how bright those yellow lines and stripes were, and it just seemed kind of weird to have like a big gridded off thing there and then immediately have those parking spots. So I went back and covered it with a little portable office and just some like supplies sitting around that I'd imagine would be next to those construction vehicles and all that stuff. Here I wanted to fence off the whole thing, which makes sense, I think. I didn't do a whole lot outside the fence, like detailing wise, kind of intentionally, because again, I do intend to eventually come back and maybe add some more components if those get added. So it'd be pretty easy just to remove the fence wherever I'm going to add the extra components and then kind of go from there. So we'll see, but it shouldn't really be too hard to do that, which is kind of nice. And I use these like big prison fences just because I don't know. I feel like they look a bit better than the other chain link fence that we have. And I mean, I know it's pretty big, but at the same time, I think that places like this usually have like pretty heavy duty fences, like the pretty tall chain link fence. So with barbed wire, obviously. So I think this is a pretty reasonable thing to have here. And then finally getting back to that little entry point, I wanted to have some just like entry gates and some security going on, some like jersey barriers at the front here. And then I think I'm just going to do a little like barrier type thing in the middle of this median. I'm not going to go too crazy on any of the detailing on the front yet. That'll come later on, but I did want to have some like lighting at the entry point and of course the barriers and all that stuff. A few cones. I think I actually didn't like those cones and deleted them. Okay, so this was kind of a pain actually. I have a hard time working with these lines because I don't really like the color that one has. You can tell it's just a little bit brighter than the regular road paint. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll end up keeping those, but I ended up removing a couple of them and then working around it a little bit here. And in fact, I don't even know if I'm going to show it because I think I just like kept tweaking and messing around with it for so long and it just didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. So you know, we'll see. I don't know. That's the one thing. It seems like the Colossal Order lines, and I was trying to look at like what Fresh have been doing colors wise, and it seems like the Colossal Order road lines just are a different color than all the assets we've found so far. So that's a bit of a pain. Also, the period key is like the hotkey for the arrows, so I keep hitting that when I'm trying to adjust size and stuff. Anyway, I'm just gonna not even worry about that. I think I go back and completely change that anyway later on. But this area back here, I wanted to go with something kind of similar to what we did over near the big interchange in just next to the main town, and that was to make like this sort of cemented off kind of thing that would block the flowing water and create a little bit of a pool kind of around this area that would be, you know, not so heavy flowing, and then that would allow us to access it via pipe. So this is where we just have like a little pipe that kind of pipes up to the just this big like tank up here that I imagine would hold all the fresh water, because again, you definitely need some fresh water in the refining process, and I think it would totally make sense to have some pipes running down to the river. Since this whole thing's built next to a river, you'd take advantage of that a little bit. The pipes themselves are a little bit hard to work with. You can see here you can't really make them curve, and I tried to do it a little bit there, and I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of how it looked, so I think I just delete that and then go back. And then I found that you could use these like larger underpass things, and then the concrete would work way better, so I went back for that one instead, just like adjusted it a little tiny bit here. And I think all in all it looks really nice. It looks like it's sort of built into the ground here, which is what I wanted. And then I used this like big arched piece here to create what looks kind of like an entry point to some sort of maybe like some part of the building, like it'd be like an actual building inside. So that's what that is there. And then use that little zigzag piece, which kind of nicely fit there and made it look like it connects at a nice perpendicular angle, which is kind of nice. And then I think I'm going to go in here and use some concrete to kind of clean it all up, because right now it looks a little bit weird with all the dirt there and then the concrete just kind of clipping into the dirt. So I'll go back and do that in a minute, but I do think I tried to, again, mimic a lot of the stuff that I did in the other one, including those little like cement struts there to hold the pipe in place, and some rocks here and there, which I think would kind of be built into the side here just to kind of refine the and prevent water corrosion and all that good stuff. So Here's the concrete. I just wanted to fill that out a little bit. It seemed kind of weird to have the, I don't even know if you call it a dam, but just like that blockade piece. It seems like it should have some concrete underneath it, so that's what that's for. And then of course the chain link fence that will be fencing the whole thing off here. I didn't want to do anything too crazy though. Obviously, I wanted it to be a pretty simple structure. There's not going to be anything really inside the that concrete area if it's all fenced off. It's mostly just going to be a nice simple little blockade structure, and then I think I'll put some like foliage stuff around it later on. But as of now, it is what it is. I'm not going to worry about it too much. And I'll pop some more rocks down at the end, but I'm pretty much ready now to jump into the foliage segment of this project here. So we'll get over to that in a minute here. I just wanted to do, oh yeah, you know what, I think before I did the foliage actually, I wanted to use the surface painter first, especially around the outsides of the refinery. It just felt like we should have some variety in texture, so I just used that, like the dirt and the ruin texture, to kind of get an idea of where I wanted to place the foliage as well, and you know, kind of fade between the natural stuff and that like straight, just like giant concrete jungle of a refinery over here. But now we're gonna jump into just like some carving and the foliage and all that stuff. I'm gonna pull this stuff back up again. This might be temporary. I might end up going back and flattening it out again to add more stuff, obviously. But regardless, we'll put some trees down now. Now, unfortunately, you're gonna see we're gonna hit the tree limit here, and I think that Strict Toaster might have known about it, or Fresh Popcorn, or both of them, but I did not know about it, and I think that they actually had the Unlimited Trees mod installed. I did not, but at the time of recording, I was pretty short on time, and I was like, oh man, we gotta figure out how we're gonna fix this. I personally had some weird problems with the Unlimited Tree mod in the past, just like with some weird tree duping stuff, so I don't really know if that was an actual issue, but regardless, we'll get it fixed. But in the meantime, I'm pretty much just going to wrap it up here, because once I ran out of trees, there wasn't much else I wanted to do. So let's go to the live portion now and take a look at the refinery. All right, so this is the finished refinery. Now, like I said in the time lapse, unfortunately, we did hit the tree limit, and it's a pretty easy fix. Again, we'll probably just be installing the Unlimited Trees mod, which should pretty much take care of everything and fix everything again. Now, I do know there's some issues with certain Unlimited Tree mods that cause like duplication of trees, and there's other things I guess that have happened in the past. Personally, I've just had some weird experiences with them, so I definitely want to take some time to make sure we get the right one, we don't mess up the save, obviously. So with all that in mind, I'm going to call it for this episode right now. I just wanted to show you guys some of the stuff we've been working on, and primarily just kind of go over this whole refinery, because it's kind of hard to talk about it whenever we're time-lapsing, so this is a much better time to go over some of this stuff now. Obviously, like I said in the time-lapse, I really couldn't tell you the whole process of creating refined oil out of crude oil. I really just, there's so many things that go into it. It's a pretty complex process, and I don't really know exactly everything about that. But I did try to get at least a good general idea of the things that go in and the things that come out in the process of refining oil. So, you know, that combined with the fact that we don't have a whole lot of assets, but we do have a couple at least of the what's going to be a full list and a full complete, I guess, kit of refinery assets very soon. So we have a few of those, and those combined with some other assets that I had laying around, I think we made a pretty convincing oil refinery. I think we got a lot of the components down, and the things that are being outputted seem to make sense. So I think this is definitely something that would pass as plausible, which is pretty much what I'm shooting for. Because again, you can never please all those people that really know about this kind of stuff. So if you are like a, what do you call, like a oil engineer, oil technician or something, I don't know. If you work in the petroleum industry or something, and I'm severely off, then I apologize. But you know, it is what it is, I guess. But anyway, man, don't you love this thing at night? I think this is super amazing. I love all these little lights that come on these different components. The asset creators did a fantastic job on that. But anyway, let's take a look at it for a little bit. So I kind of wanted to just show off a few of the areas, and more importantly, just give you guys an idea of what the individual buildings look like. So all of these little things here are, I'm gonna see if I can even hover over one of them. I'll use the move it so you guys can see a bit better what I'm clicking on. So all of Here we go. Let's see if I can hover over it here. It's very finicky. Oh, that's the wrong one. Come on. It was just, I just had it a minute ago here. It's there we go. So all of these are individual components, and they make up this like kind of network of pipes that kind of run around here. They go inside the refinery and around these areas. This is 3 different buildings. I think that's pretty obvious. I showed that in time lapse. So these 3 buildings here, we've got a flare tower right here, which is pretty sweet on its own. I only have one of these, which I think is probably just enough. And then we've got these distillation towers sort of scattered about. You can see it's this thing right here. And that one, well, obviously is distilling. And then we've got a few of these, I think, kind of thrown about. One over here, and there's 2 over here. This is like one of my favorite parts, honestly. I feel like these tanks really came along nicely. So we have these like big distillation towers, and then they all kind of feed into these big oil tanks, which I would imagine are like the completed, I guess, refined oil would be all sort of piling up in these. And then from there, we've got like our little loading dock thing down here, and I love how this worked out. These little valves kind of all fit into place nicely, which is super awesome. So I would imagine you could just pull your truck up here and connect the proper hose to the right tube, and you got your own you got your refined oil. So there's that. This side over here is supposed to be the power output facility. So from what I understand anyway, in the oil refining process, it seems like there is, I think, heat energy is the primary thing that you're going to get out of some of these processes. And so these are supposed to be heat energy, all being basically just generating power, I think, in the form of steam. At least these generate in the form of steam. I'm not quite sure if that's what happens in a refinery. So that's what's going on over here. And then we've also got some of these, I believe they're called like delayed cokers. It's these big towers. There's 2 of them. One of them, which is this one, is like the full facility. It's got like the whole like double-sided thing going on here, and this is where all the asphalt would be coming out, and I guess taken away and used. So that's another one of those things that comes out of oil refining. And then I've got this little like area over here, which I would imagine would just be all of those trucks are going to be hauling away the asphalt as it comes out, would be kind of parked along here, just like a different little storage facility over on this side. We got the same thing over here, but it's like half of one over on this side, doing a very similar thing. That was mostly just because I didn't want to have like the exact same thing twice, so I thought let's try and shake it up a bit and have another distillation tower over here, and you know, stuff like that going on. And then over here, we have what I would imagine to be, I guess, a second, maybe different type of refined oil outflow point. So all of these like oil trucks could come in, they could back up into the loading bay, and then we've got these little pipes that can then output the oil. I don't know. I thought that all made sense. So that's what I came up with. And again, you know, I wish that I could say that I'm an expert, but I'm not by a long shot. So I do apologize to all of you out there who maybe work in the industry or know a thing or two about these, because I don't know a whole lot. But, you know, I think that we did a pretty good job, all things considered. And I think that, especially considering the fact that there really aren't a whole lot of assets out there right now that we can work with, it all turned out pretty nicely. And because we don't have the ability to expand upon this little area any further, you know, obviously we don't have any more trees to work with. It may have been a blessing in disguise, because now, well, first of all, next time, like I said, we'll be going in and expanding a bit on the industrial park, and it shouldn't take nearly as much time to wrap the rest of this area up. In fact, I think we do this whole thing in one episode and maybe do some other stuff as well. But it just was a lot of work to get this super dense area all, you know, detailed and worked on. So that's just kind of the nature of a project like this, I think. But anyway, I'm looking forward to getting to expand on this, and then if we're lucky, and I wouldn't even say if we're lucky, I would say I'm really excited personally to see exactly what these asset creators who are working on this project currently for the refinery end up coming up with, because if we have some more components by then, I may be able to expand it a little bit in this direction, add some more components here and there before we, you know, finalize this whole this whole end of the, whatever you call this thing. It's kind of like a peninsula, but it's more like the inside of a river. Anyway, so we'll see how that goes. But regardless, I want to leave you guys with a little cinematic and show off some of the different cool little areas within this refinery that we built during this episode. Hope y'all enjoyed. Let me know what you think of the refinery down below, and of course, any future suggestions, any asset suggestions, because again, it's really hard to find these assets. But with all that said, I'm going to hand the save off to Fresh Popcorn, so be sure to check his channel next Friday for the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.